Hello, everyone. I think we're gonna get started. We've got plenty of time for Q&A. It's absolute pleasure to have Pramod and Carlos here to talk to us about something which is very, very important. Pramod is the architect of digital transformation in India, and I just saying Carlos is the architect of the digital transformation at the judge. So if anything goes wrong, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. He's the lead of the innovation hub here at Cambridge Judge Business School. Absolute pleasure to have you. You're going to do a fireside chat, and then have your questions ready. And actually, I'm going to disappear and get something. I'm going to get 2 books, best questions from the audience, as judged by the 2 of you, perhaps. Can't give it to each other. Yeah? We'll get a book signed by Pramod. Does that sound good? Sorry. No, just jump in. The more the merrier. Over to you, Carlos. Pramod.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. This will be, very informal chat, quick, and as Kamia said, it's a real pleasure to have someone that has been described as the CTO of India. And we were just in a conversation with the Central Bank of Peru, and he explained that actually he was a volunteer while doing all the work of digital transformation. So and so the people in the central bank were like, wow. That's an idea, how could we get volunteers to actually run our programs, and the lead, and that person become the chief project manager of a project that, he's not even paid for, but that's the quality of these things. But and the reason to have this meeting here is like, I was invited a year ago to visit, or a year and a half ago to visit Bangalore by Nandan Nilekani, who's, the co-founder of Infosys. And in a way, the philanthropist that has made possible all the, the changes in India, and that was able to recruit the amazing people that are here, Sujit Nair, and then Siddharth Shetty, sort of all of them with, incredible creations. And the only, when he invited me, the thing I thought is, I think some of that would be useful in Cambridge, some of the very specific applications that, like how we park our cars, in a decentralized network, is something that could be sorted. And so that was the motivation of this. But to start with, I think we wanted to, to create a little bit of the inspiration, so that, to see how all it happened, and going to Pramod's journey, and reading a bit, and I might have read it from bad sources, Pramod, and I have talked a lot with you, but you still can correct me. But it seems that he went to a very local school in India when he was growing up. He didn't even apparently, speak English sort of well. But from there, he moved to, university, and then, becoming the India's CTO, and then kind of the global digital supremo now, because he was in Cairo with, 200 nations and all that. So tell us a little bit on how that happened, and, what are the principles that guided you in that, journey?
Wow, it's fantastic. I'm not sure, is it on? Is it on? Okay, yeah, sure. Great to be here, by the way. Thank you for taking time. Yeah, so I grew up in a very small town and never spoke English until 18. It was just not there. But, English, because of India, English is the connecting language, link language for us. So it was inevitable that I learned. But I went into, do math. So that's amazing, because I love discrete math. I love Turing. And I was watching his room. I said, wow, this is what stuff happened. It's amazing to be here, by the way. And then went on to do computer science PhD, and, completed all that thing, and went into start a company in Boston. And we were part of the founding team there. But in 2009, by the time I was back in India, setting up our engineering, grew, got acquired, quite a successful exit. But by then, call it midlife crisis. You want to be able to apply your knowledge to something. But really, the opportunity struck when the news came out that India is actually starting one of the biggest project that, probably world has seen to give identity for 1 billion people and begin the digital transformation. And I volunteered to be the chief architect of it and never look back.
And what principles have guided you, in doing all these different things? Curiosity.
I know. I've always been a learner. I'm a teacher, learner. I come from a teaching family. So I think you're always learning. I think so. I've been a perpetual lifelong learner. I loved, and I expanded. I'm an artist, and I can do. I'm an adventure sports person. So I have a wide variety of things that I connect together, and it's very useful when you think about design. Design is not just tech. It's so many more things that come together. So some of that helped, but really that inspired is scale. Even in private company, when we were very, very, very high scale. And this is in the late 90s. We were building massively scalable internet scale application in Boston. And we had really large, small engineering team, but fantastic scale. We were doing millions and millions of transactions, and we owned pretty much any retailer you name. Macy's, JCPenney, Walmart, Best Buy, Target, everyone. We owned them. I was very proud of what we architected there. And so a scale allowed me to think, but I was also quite a business person. I loved tech for what purpose? So I always asked that purpose question. And some of that came in handy. I think the principles of simplicity. I loved unbundling complex problems to really small atomic pieces and rebundling them. I love concepts like that. My PhD, I think, helped also to think abstract. That's very useful to think abstraction and reapply. So that all that came in handy later.
Yeah.
But I think building for the nation is very different for building for a company. Just super different.
Yeah, but I think those principles come through, through a lot of the work that has been done in India. But focusing just on the, ID, not because of what it is, but just because it was the first time of the 1.4 billion covering such a massive project in the context of a civil service that is kind of British and then with a Indian political economy. So really difficult to make things happen. And so, so I think we want to hear a little bit what are your tips to actually make that happen?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Sama wants to do.
Sorry, just 1 to 5. Here we have ex-members of parliament, and so Julian,
it's all contextual. There's a reason why countries go to, start implementing something. It's mostly value-driven, value to the society. So you have to ask that question, why did we care about identity in the country? This is because we never had a good civil registry. India never built a civil registry at all, ever, since independence. And we never had a birth-death registry, clean registry. It was not even mandatory to register births. So only 40% of Indians even registered, including educated family. My father,
but
he doesn't
I wanted you to answer the difficult part of the question.
I'll come to it.
And IDs here, I'm not going to take, I have Julian here and that's not, but the difficulty of making it happen.
Yeah.
How you get the Indian civil service and it's partly volunteers, the answer, right? But,
No, I think a couple of things. One, we got an outside person like Nandan Nilekani to chair. So he brought very different entrepreneurial view to Delhi. And, and he recruited a brilliant officer, very clean record officer who's a doer as the CEO. So he was a chairman. So we had this nice tango between an entrepreneur, private market player versus a career bureaucrat, right? And then they built a small team. At that time, one of the first things they did is also bring volunteers. Ask for people to journey in that inspired journey to join. Not because they want a job, salary, they just wanted to really contribute. So that was a good thing we did.
It was an amazing team that was managed to recruit.
Like literally 4 or 5 people, but really world-class people who came together to support that. But we had a good set of bureaucrats subsequently to also make sure the I's are dotted and T's are crossed, and parliament questions are answered, approvals are done, and Right to Information Act in India, you can ask questions and you have to be able to answer that. Taxpayers' money, how are you spending? A lot of rigor. And we all tend to appreciate, outside we didn't appreciate, when you go realize why do they do what they do, bureaucrats, right? And then you tend to learn that take, but together I think the best part Nandan did is to set a goal that was unachievable. He said, we'll issue 600 million IDs. Yeah. He promised the Prime Minister, we'll issue 600 million IDs in 5 years. And the first 1 year is honeymoon period because you have no idea what you're doing. And the last 6 months is election time because of next election, nobody cares what you do. So you really have 4.5 years. But the best part, we hit 600 million in 4.5 years. So it was, and the principles of simplicity. It was one of the most simplest identity system in the world.
And the fact that he went and the team everywhere in the country, right, to get to know exactly what was the need.
What we call create positive coalition to support you, believe in the value of it, value of identity to 1 billion people, so that they can bring economic inclusion, gender parity, bank account access, all that real value unlock, and also subsidy transfer. That was a big topic. But in addition to that, I think we kept the system so simple and really applied market principles of partnership-driven rollout and not a big setting up a massive empire. Typically, you end up procuring lot, building your offices first, recruiting people, and by the time you get to going 3, 4 years, 5 years, millions of dollars have gone down. We spent nothing. We launched literally in 1 year.
And everything with frugality,
Here we have so we ended up spending $1.50 per person. We have 1.4 billion people right now.
And so now moving to the next big concept, and is this new, which is today's topic, the digital revolution. And I was talking to one of your colleagues there, which reminded me that it's actually nothing new. It's like in the same way that the internet broke silos of information that were, in libraries, databases, different companies. Now, with these massive open networks, you're breaking silos again, but a different type of silos and different types of pains that, people in the room might feel familiar. So can you describe, in an intuitive way, what is the open networks that, has been proven with, the payment system of UPI and Pix in Brazil is doing?
Yeah. I think there is a timing. Internet itself showed us that you don't need a central system to pass everything through, and you can actually create a lot more decentralized, what's called protocol-driven or standards-driven, whether it's transmission standards, representation standards like HTML or other standards. You can actually build that very well. But we really didn't do beyond the internet anything else. So when we were looking at payment, that's when we started first. I applied some of that principles into the payment network. How do we break we were asked a very simple question. If bytes can move near free and messages can flow that easily, like instant message, why is it so hard to move money from one system into another system? And then we were asking harder questions because that was easy question. Then you ask deeper question, trust, settlement, KYC, counterparty norms, flows, all that stuff you start asking. But even that happened, we were very much fresh people from outside. So one thing, again, was useful is the knowledge was not a burden. I didn't know how real banking systems worked. So that allowed me to ask very first principles questions about why is the money movement so hard, and why is it so hard, and why is it so hard? And eventually, but the real idea was to create an interconnected, massively interconnected system between banks, FMIs, fintechs, to move value. And then we said, okay, if you want to do that, and if you still want to future-proof, how do you inspire yourself from internet to build protocols, simplicity, so that you can keep it really simple and then allow innovation to happen. So that's the UPI is eventually 1 year worth of discussions with the entire industry, and distilling it ended up with page and a half. That's it, one and a half
then
page.
for those that do not know, UPI is
So
a rapid
Unified Payment System is a
Rapid payment
real-time,
system, yeah.
interoperable, open-loop payment system in India, quite like PIX in Brazil or PromptPay in Thailand, quite similar to that. And that was launched in 2016. Today, we just did 15.5 billion transactions a month, and 500 million plus transactions every day. Across 350 banks, 100 plus FMIs and fintechs in between, many apps. So the fundamental value is this. I can use any app to pay anyone else from any of my bank account to any other bank or mobile wallet account. I don't need to care. I just scan and pay QR codes. So India created what's called an open loop QR code instead of a closed loop QR code system. And that was the first attempt at open network. But even then, now that takes us to a larger discussion. Even then, we were realizing, but we built that whole network just to move money. What happens to equities? What happens to other assets? We just couldn't answer. How many more infrastructure will be built in the country to move other forms of assets? Now these are not even regulated. Half of them are not regulated, or their regulators don't talk. This is actually starting to open up a larger conversation in our mind. How do we create more unified, open loop networks that allow many, many systems to put the user at the center to be able to transact?
Yeah, so I think something that we were discussing is sort of in the same way that the initial digital revolution broke the silos and made it easy for consumers to have access to information. Now, in a way, Amazon, Airbnb, all these big platforms have been incredibly useful.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, now they have created walled gardens. They have created some inconveniences. Sometimes the charges are too high, let's say in Uber for the riders, etc. And so I think in that way, open networks kind of break again those silos, right? And can you give us sort of like examples of like what can you potentially do? Let's say having an application that it's using open networks for, something that already exists like tax writing, but also, what would it happen in other kind of, so people can have an actual application
in the mind?
Yeah.
I think the idea we were conceiving is that if there are providers of resources, taxi, if I'm a taxi driver, I have a taxi. If I have a homestay provider, I have a homestay to offer. So I have a resource to offer, and consumers on the other side want access to those resources. But how do we end up solving naturally is that some platform would be set up by commercial players or mechanisms of that sort who will bring providers onto that platform, on board providers to the platform, and on board consumers painfully, and now you matchmake. But the value exchange between the provider and consumers get accumulated in the middle, and that value becomes the power and starts go towards more monopolistic behavior or extractive behavior of sort. And sometimes it's okay. Sometimes, they do a great job. It's not that they don't do a great job. Real value get unlocked. But nevertheless, choice gets reduced. Choice keep on getting reduced. And now a very practical example. I was in Cairo, as you said, for the massive, multi-country conference. Uber's not properly working. They said, oh, there's another app called Kareem. Why don't you download Kareem? Okay, I downloaded Kareem. Or that I use India mobile number to register. OTP won't come. Okay. Last week I was in Singapore FinTech a couple of weeks ago, Siddharth and I. Oh, okay, now I have to download Grab. because this damn thing doesn't work there, right? So, and we were in Copenhagen and nothing works. Okay, so because they said, oh, no, we threw everybody out. Now we call all some 1-800 number or whatever you call it, right? So I asked the hotel guy, so please book a cab for me. How am I supposed to try? Now, this is a weird thing. Actually, it's weird that really it's possible to imagine that there is resources can be discovered on the same app as long as you don't make the assumption that both providers and consumers need to be on the same platform. The moment you disconnect that notion that they have to be on the same platform, you can imagine a network possibility of some apps in Cairo whose tuk-tuks or taxis and the metro in Cairo is offering their service and resources. And on this side, maybe I'm using a Google Map or whatever app I am familiar with. I should be able to broadcast my intent that I'm looking for a ride from here to there. And somebody should be able to say, I can offer that. This is my price. Do you want to click?
So again, okay. the focus is in looking for what works for the user. Right? For the consumer.
And also for the provider. Funny thing, this allows the provider now. In fact, that's where, see, a lot of times consumers are pampered by these platforms, because consumers are their real power. But they transfer that overhead to the provider, whether it's large supply chain companies, or whether large e-com company, eventually providers get sort of jacked in the deal. They get larger margins, they get slower pay, their settlement or payment gets slower, they don't pay on the same day, they'll pay 1 week later because float, I can manage my float better. So I think these platforms start playing with the provider. So I think it's a freedom for providers and consumers. And advantage is that a lot more local entrepreneurs now don't have to worry about global consumer acquisition. All they have to do is they can actually go and say, I'm going to acquire all my local homestay folks or, taxi people or whatever, artisans who want to sell products. And that's what I do. Then I offer my catalog on this grid that can be actually discovered.
And can you tell us just the use cases that you have, you are already operating in India? They are live, like, they see electric vehicles and,
that's great.
Open parking and things like that.
We started, Sujit and I, along with Nandan, we started a foundation to build an open source protocol called Beckn, B-E-C-K-N, Beckn protocol, without the O. Beckn. And Beckn protocol was a large community effort, probably 10,000 plus global community members in the open source community, building the protocols for a variety of commerce transactions. Now, obviously, we need a playground to pilot it and so on. So since we were in Bangalore, we ended up piloting a taxi booking app called Namayatri in Bangalore. And that was hugely successful. Less than a year, millions of rides with no central platform. And this is also possible because 10, 15 years ago, drivers didn't have smartphones, didn't have connectivity, so it would have been harder. Now, everybody has a computer in their hand, and everybody is connected. So I think the connectedness, everybody having a computing environment on the edges, plus programmability on top of it, is giving us a lot more possibilities today that a driver with an app can be discovered, directly peer-to-peer. And this experiment, we started probably a year and a half ago now, several millions of rides. Drivers love it because drivers said, I can do peer-to-peer and I get all the money. This is amazing. And I just pay a SaaS fee. SaaS fee was $0.25 per day. That's all the fee, flat fee. He said, that's all the app cost me? Okay, great. And nobody's taking a cut of the transaction because consumers are paying them directly. They loved it, so they just went. One of the least, by the way, compared to Uber and other networks, they're all there in India. Namayatri actually the least cancellation and most predictable booking because drivers don't cancel because they get all the money, right? This experiment expanded to what you referred to as ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce, ondc.org. It's a not-for-profit cooperative, digital cooperative by the market, created by the market, not by the government, by the marketplace themselves, came together and say, We will adopt backend protocol to create not a closed marketplace, a networked marketplace, not a platform-based marketplace, a network or market space, if you want to call that, your work, a network-based marketplace. And the power of that is that now many producers are starting to join the grid, and providers are offering logistics services, food delivery services, financial services like insurance and lending offers on that network. And the consumers on the other side is consumer apps. On the other side is able to now rebundle them to say, oh, I can give you a ride. Oh, by the way, I can also give you food before the ride. Completely different people, different providers, programmatically bundled into a nice service. 125 million transactions in a year already crossed. So we do 50 minutes. And it's still early. For India scale, it's very early, by the way.
In India, all the numbers are
anyway,
that's
what I'm
because
saying.
of the scale,
Yeah. So which is what we call what's called early scale. We are very early scale. But I think what is realizing, it's a reason why some of that is working really well in India is also India is an extremely largely fragmented economy. And it's very important to understand. Even with Amazon spending billions of dollars, fantastic service, we all love it, we use it. They have penetrated 8% of B2C. 92% of B2C is nothing to do with platforms. So fragmented, Uber does less than the whole of nation. They do less transaction than one city metro alone. One city in metro does more rides than whole of nation.
And getting us into our energy theme, So simply the example of the electric vehicles,
So India is going through a massive e-transition. Good, solar islands, solar effort, solar rooftops. Policies are getting friendlier because obviously we depend on oil. It's not good for us, so it sort of works out well for everything. As part of that, what we are realizing, which we didn't know, I think the backend community, frankly, the creators of backend protocol, most of the community didn't even imagine energy space could be a space we could even go because we didn't understand space. But the bunch of startups in the energy sector, who are they? Virtual VPP or virtual power plants, battery aggregators who are aggregating idle batteries, large battery pool like compute cloud, they're creating a battery cloud, virtual battery cloud for store and dispensing. EV charging stations, one of the biggest difficulty with EV charging startups are that they're setting up these EV chargers, all of them, except maybe Tesla, even around the world, less than 10% utilization. Who wants to put asset and have less than 10% utilization? It makes no sense. I want it to be sweated fully. I want it to be really, really used as much as possible. So it's very important that these assets that we can invested assets like green assets are being fully leveraged, fully used. So the community, the startup community in the energy sector came together to leverage backend to create world's first decentralized energy network. And we are doing 2 gigawatts dispensing a month, 65 megawatts probably a day, 15,000 roughly transactions a day. It includes a composition of EV charging, micro trades. Some of the states in India allows peer-to-peer trade. So you can sell it to a best price rather than selling back to the grid in a fixed price. I can look for a better price in the market. So some of these policies are starting to open up, which is very, very good because grids don't want to buy in the afternoon because the afternoon is the least used. Evening is all the power surge come by the time solar is gone. So it's one of the weird things. But if you can open up without grid having to buy back everything and anyone can buy, grid being the carrier, of course they get the carrier's fee. But other than that, they are able to actually manage demand, better demand management, everything else. So there is another element of this, which again, we dreamt of it, we didn't realize it'll happen, is what you call composability. A lot of times we say oh, we want to create a logistics marketplace. We'll create a logistics marketplace. Oh, you wanted a food delivery marketplace. We create food delivery. But what we don't realize is that if you can create an open marketplace which is composable, you are actually able to offer, oh, you're buying a TV, or somebody is going you extended warranty or insurance. Completely different parties on the transaction. There, we are able to compose financial services, logistics services, and others into a bundle that otherwise one mega platform has to do it for us. And that's, again, creates monopolies and other issues.
And, going back to what we discussed yesterday in this climate impact retreat, looking at how these networks could help the UK to become we call it a green superpower, which is the aspiration of the Labour government, but how, the grid, rather than being physical, it can be maximized digitally. Some ideas.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Not again, use cases, right?
Yeah.
Use cases, no copy paste work. Use cases are very contextual. You have every jurisdiction region has to find their own best use cases. But the principles of open network, principles of interconnected systems should work everywhere. So in the UK, yesterday, the UK conversation was mostly about if you have wind power, offshore wind, if you have other investing in nuclear power sources, other power sources you are investing in. Do you want to continue investing that in silo, or do you want to allow a network, create a network architecture that can bring wind, nuclear, maybe hydrogen or other power as they evolve? You don't know what economics will work out, which one will win in the future. So you create yourself an optionality into the future, saying, if I create optionality in the future, then let the best thing work itself out. But the ability to buy, sell, discover, interact is very, very useful. I think UK should really, really look at twofold. One, how do we create innovation and funding for new forms of production, storage, transmission? Very clearly. Second, you should definitely look for a policy support, a policy discussion around energy policy that's lot more allowing newer forms of dynamic trade, even if it's limited, ability for distribution companies to be able to go beyond current structures. So policy support. And third is entrepreneurial. Definitely create an open network where entrepreneurs can start experimenting battery pooling, creating VPPs, behind the meter, smart technologies using AI or other algorithms to be able to shape the demand and utilization and so on. How do they all play out in silo? We'll never play out in silo. There's no other way UK could imagine this other than a principle of an interoperable open playground where each of this innovation plugs itself out and whoever wins.
And the
wins.
structure of OPEC being decentralized also matches the fact that now the energy generation of sustainable energy is actually different, decentralized, right?
Much of the energy, definitely, unlike the earlier days of centralized production, mega production, unidirectional distribution, consumer being just a consumer, is completely changing itself to become consumer becoming producer, prosumer, local production, decentralized production, batteries are prices are collapsing, so storage is becoming local. So you have to layer a much more dynamic, information-driven layer, energy grid. So you think of a digital energy grid to be created on top of a physical grid. If you leave it to only physical grid, all this will play out in silo. So you have to create a unified digital grid. And that's an OTN, Open Transaction Network, for the energy. So think of that as
I think that gives us the basis. Maybe the only additional element is what would you expect, from if Cambridge was going to play a part, and this has been a discussion that we have had for some time, if Cambridge was going to, form part of, of making this solution a global solution, because, we have also the work in Belém, which is going to host the next
COP30.
COP30. and Belém is beginning to use these decentralized networks, which means that they can be connected to India, just like, both in, education, in IT,
Skilling,
in energy, knowledge. So, these are new ways of doing things. And so, how could Cambridge, become part of that ecosystem, which is, that's part of our ambition as well.
Yeah.
But, from your point of view, what would be helpful?
Very, very, very useful for us. And that's the reason why we are, this trip for us is that we are setting up because it's an open source project, it's always been open source from day one, entire community. But how do we create global communities around this? Requires significant governance structuring. So we are setting up a Swiss foundation, lab in the 501c3 in the US and in Singapore, probably somewhere in UK. We have very, very huge demand and pull for us to be able to support, and enough support being offered locally. So we hope to set up one here, lab itself, open source lab. But we require a strong academic and academic partner to create few, in terms of policies, in terms of early experiments, measurements, and of course, from the computer science side of low-level, massive reimagination of whether it's cryptographic technologies, tokenization technologies, anything of that sort. It requires significant continued thinking.
Yeah.
And so you want an environment that is multifaceted.
Yeah.
And that's the reason we are here in Cambridge.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to go anywhere else.
Yeah, I think from looking at the Indian experience, to me, I think that the secret of, that it actually happened in that context of a very difficult political economy, difficult, civil service, etc., is because there was a very strong, IT open source community that was, with students and, and I think when we're talking about in Brazil, that's kind of the thing that is going to give the engine to that, not necessarily formal labs or anything, but that enthusiasm, and that's something difficult
really
but will be good to explore.
Yeah.
But I think the point Camila told us is to actually have a
Stop
discussion
and
with all of you. So please, question there.
It's a bit of a killjoy question, but who sets the rules in the open playground? Like, how is it regulated? How does it function? And is it kind of survival of the fittest, or how does that play out? I guess.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So the playground itself is, I mean, sometimes you don't want to use the word permissionless, but that is, I mean, sometimes wrongly used. It's open playground, but the flow on that infrastructure itself is open, but what flow gets regulated depending on what you're flowing. For example, if you're flowing energy, the local energy regulations will play out. If we are booking taxi in London, you'll have very local regulations that would play out, whether 6 p.m., whether you'd allow congestion pricing, whether you're okay to book, not okay to book, or between I'm shutting down taxis, I'm only doing public transport. All these are programmable. So the way we are imagining is that it creates a playground for programming the flows as per the local jurisdiction and the rules. But if it's a agri-produce, and if it's an open market, then the buyer-seller sets the rules. Maybe there is no government or rules that really set playing out. But when it comes to money, your central bank would have a say. You know what you're flowing, where are you flowing, counter-terrorism funding, KYC, all that question. So the real question is about the flow. The question we ask is that, can you program the your rules into that flow and prove to the local as per. If you don't like the local rules, that is for you to fight that. It's not for anyone else to say what should work for UK.
But I think you're right that like the core of all these systems is to pay attention to the governance, because it's in the governance is going to determine if it works appropriately or not. So
but I want to make sure that we don't confuse ourselves with the single governance entity trying to govern the network. Very, very bad idea. That's not how we are imagining. Governance of flows depending on what you're flowing. And we'll have a variety of rules playing out. And you, if you're an energy aggregator, if you're selling energy retailer in UK or like Neom or somewhere, you have to follow the rules, whatever rule, local rules. Yeah.
Fascinating talk. I'm quite taken, I think, by some of the ideas set in the latter piece, particularly if it means the end of Uber. Wonderful success. I share some of the concern about how we've seen Uber actively break laws in a way which is much easier to police than it is if you have a completely decentralized system. But rather than me tell you what I think the worries are and you say why they're not right, we used to talk in policy terms about the idea that any designer of something should have to write a Black Mirror episode based on what's going on. So what would worry you most if you had to sit on the other side of the fence and draw a scenario where there's a problem?
It's being recorded, so that's not going to come well.
No.
Yeah. Could go. What are the weak points?
Okay, so what again? I would answer in two ways. One, what could go wrong at a infrastructure, general, like internet? What could go wrong as the infrastructure? Could DNS be brought down? Could protocols could be corrupted? Do you know the endpoint? How do you trust the security? That's a very low-level infrastructure question. Then you could also ask higher order question. Economy on that internet or the activities on the internet, what could go wrong? Child trafficking, using it, or private conversation, you just made it easier for some bad actors to converse better because you just give them all the tools. So you can't blame the internet for itself, but you ask a new layered set of questions. So what could go wrong? Many things could go wrong, will go wrong, guaranteed to go wrong.
But it's like AI, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing.
Technology.
So, but I think the way is you have to peel that onion very carefully. So we look at the protocol level, infrastructure level, we ask more computer science-like questions about what could go wrong. But at the functional flow level, are you moving money, energy, what could go wrong in that sector? Or are you buying food from a local restaurant? What could go wrong? Maybe a very different set of go wrong. Or are you selling drugs on top of it? Or medicine? How do you know this is even an approved medicine? So what go wrong is depend on what the economic flow on top of that. Each of them have to ask the question. In general, also general societal issues that we see, payment experience, for example, UPI, even at that scale, is 1/5 the fraud of a card network. Even then, we worry at that scale, 520 million transactions at scale, 500 million people doing transactions every day. Even a small scale of fraud means few million people getting screwed in the deal, right? And the very high chance these are low volume, low value customers who don't have enough backup. So I still remember a security guard in our office saying, I only had 5,000 rupees in my thing. And I just sent it to my wife and she said she hasn't received yet. Who am I supposed to call? And then we obviously resolved that because they had to call their bank to say, oh, where is it? But that was not his issue. He said, sir, I know I'll get the money back because banks do a reasonable job, but I get the money back 1 week later. She needs 5,000 right now. I have no second 5,000 to send, right? So the implications of going wrong is quite high. And social engineering is another massive social engineering digital world. In the digital bad actors are very well coordinated. I keep telling this, all the people. We are idiots. I'm telling you, the good people don't coordinate. We discuss until the cows come home. We don't work together. Regulators don't talk together. One hand doesn't know what other. Bad actors are beautifully coordinated. They are so well coordinated, they're cheating the hell out of the system because you are not. So I think we have so much to peel. And so it's a very careful consideration of these questions about how do you deal with social engineering.
We have another question. Careful.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. So my background is networking. Many of the things you mentioned are really, in some sense, utopian.
Oh, yeah.
Back over 50 years now. Decentralized access is led to the open protocol design.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. One or two. Now, the country, one or two. Make us so in actual
Into.
tendency to centralize because there's a generic economy of scale.
That's true.
So why we want to break down the silo? Aren't you opposing natural tendency to centralize? And so in some sense, you do to fail. I mean,
Very, very good. Very, very good. A couple of things. One, the idea of decentralization isn't, we are not chasing an utopian, decentralize everything and have no control over the flow, regulatory controls, let people do whatever they want. It's never the question. We live in a society, we are not ideologists saying that institutions don't matter. We ourselves created these institutions, whether we like it or not. So we have to, I think, how do you program inefficient way of dealing with supervisory controls, monitoring controls, today's paperwork to do KYCs or amount of paperwork to do a lending offer from a bank. It's just crazy. So one argument we make is that you bring massive efficiency. Second, you bring a lot more players to the playground to play because you're actually decentralizing, unbundling, and creating possibilities for new composable flows to happen. But on top of that, you will still have, it's like Tetris game. While we decentralize the bottom layers and democratize the bottom layers, the top layers keep concentrating itself. I suppose that's how the world works. We are not purists to say. So we are always asking the question, like his point, if there is a significant asymmetry between the drivers or in a transportation network, and if you want to create a multimodal transportation network where you can actually book a metro but last mile a taxi, things like that, how do you reimagine some of that possibility? But on top of that, some app guys might still create a very powerful so much power and value unlock that they lock you into a consumer. We see that even with UPI. You were bringing that up. Even the playground is open. Any app can connect in, any bank can connect in. Eventually, the two apps who are dominating are global players, because it's just hard to consumer acquisition. It's not a socialism playing out. It is eventually capitalism playing out on the top. But the bottoms can be. So the question is that do we leave the bottom at the internet level? Or do we put payment infrastructure level? Or can we create more commerce infrastructure, open networks for energy? But still, the value unlock on top will be still market-driven. And very high chance market-driven ones will concentrate as much as they can. Lots of?
what's the narrow waist? IP narrow waist.
Yeah, so narrow waist is the cusp of the hourglass, or is the protocol that allows the next set of protocols. So if you think TCP/IP, then HTTP, so think of beckon as another layer, and open payment protocols as another layer. Each of them creates an hourglass that creates its own supply pool and demand side of the innovations. But very high chance demand side, when you look at it, it brings together few large players to eventually play that game. Then you ask again, how do you take something out? And then I think that's what we should keep doing. It's not one time. You can never get it.
Did that convince you, the answer? You can.
It's a dynamic system. Very true. Yeah, I suppose. It takes a while before it happens. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to explore the time. So, as you said, that I think if I understand it correctly, the network leaves the enforcement and education and dispute resolution thing to somebody else, the governance mechanism.
Yeah.
Right. And so the fungibility of information becomes a problem. So if I transact with you, then that information is easily changeable.
Yeah.
And when I want to take it to court, it should be like a written piece of paper.
Very good.
And so, have you thought about this?
Oh, yeah.
Second thing
of course.
is that
yeah.
when it comes to contracts, this is the whole issue about information across time. How do you kind of contract? So is that incorporated into Beckon?
Natively. And this is where cryptographic techniques come in handy to create immutable, non-tamperable evidences and contract. So you and I decide, you said you're going to offer this room for, £100 during this time, I booked it. My contract and your contract are actually something we can't change later, tamper with. So you as a provider can't say, I didn't offer you. Because they are digitally signed, cryptographically signed, they're non-tamperable. The techniques exist today. Computer science guys know. Techniques allow you to do that. Of course, you can always ask what happens when quantum comes, something breaks. But again, some of that is very, very nicely evolving, very powerful ways to create verifiability, non-tamperability, and immutability around some of this. Good techniques exist. So they're baked into Beacon protocol.
And in some ways, that
It's okay.
solves the rules problem, right?
That solves the
Problem, because if everything is visible, then it's
no. Okay, so that's interesting.
It helps.
They're not
It helps.
publicly visible, so that's very important that we are not again talking about everything you both do. For example, should be visible to public because we are going to, as a community, we're going to. No, that's not how the world works. Yeah. Oh yeah. So I think the advantage of creating verifiable and immutable evidences out of this allows both supervisory mechanism, regulatory mechanism to ask me, show me the proof of everything you did. And did you really do KYC? Did you really do a limit check? Show me the proof that you couldn't have manipulated later, right? Same thing happens in court. Show me the evidence that you said you promised this price. He said, no, that's not what you promised. Show me the evidence. No, you have signed it. That's what paper does. In digitally, you can do the same thing.
I want to bring Sujit just briefly here. He also is part of the team.
But you were co-conspirator.
Yeah. So you were
Yeah.
you were talking a bit of governance and trust, and and you were describing a system that with transparency and stuff that could not completely replace, but make it easier to gain trust.
Just keep it short. So one of the things we're trying to do with the open protocol thing, to add what Pramod mentioned, you want to, how do you execute and enforce history without having the overheads of tech infrastructure, fundamentally very light baked into the protocol. On top of it, how do you enhance the trust of the parties participating? So can we append our own credentials in a digital manner? For example, I'm offering a service, let's say it's a B2B transaction, I want to be proving myself as a very reliable supplier. So how do I show that? So I can give my proof of prior business, proof of credentials and reputation from other clients. How can I add that seamlessly into my
Contract itself,
so that there is more information, more trust baked into that? And doing it real time in a digital way, so that I don't have to have off the network conversation, but I can do it real time, so that I can earn that trust and then execute the contract, so that my chance of getting business goes up. How do you create those appendable trust infrastructure artifacts onto a transaction, whether it's for energy or for writing?
You can bring the documents as well, right? Your story and documents, how documents verifiable for different people.
Infrastructure which otherwise fails apart. So we don't have that in the design of internet today, but in the transaction infrastructure we're designing in this decade, those are some of the critical elements, especially talking about commerce, energy transactions. They become pretty fundamental to solve for, and Beacon protocol and some of the work we're doing in FinterNet addresses some of this as very fundamental aspects of how you should think about decentralized.
And just to add on to that, thanks Sujit, these are not things that we have to cook up. Verifiable credentials, global efforts to credentialing, whether it's your proof of who you are, what you do, what you offer. Are you offering an organic product? How do I know it's an organic product, or is it approved by, and so on. So I think we work with John and so on in Turing Institute, many of them, to bring that idea that we can use global standards to bring verifiability and append that into the micro contract, so that the evidences are its packet of contracts, paper. Think of the regular physical paper, but it's all digital. Yeah.
the significance of that? What does that mean? And how's it benefit?
Yeah, so I'll explain in the payment world, it's a very common thing that you could create, do you know a company called Venmo? Okay, so Venmo is a great example of a closed loop system where Venmo customers can, transfer money to Venmo within the Venmo's walled garden. And that's a closed loop typical system. An open loop payment system means any to any app to any app, any bank to any bank. So create an open loop creates wider network effect than a smaller one. Venmo does a good job, but if you could do a more wider network, the network effect is much higher. That's what it means by open.
And I think we're also just playing with the idea on how to make open networks, intuitive.
Yeah.
And we're talking that open banking, open finance.
Similar idea.
They give you, that concept
Excellent
of
point.
interoperability so that, to make it,
That's a
more,
good point.
more linked to others.
Yeah.
Another question?
Yeah.
Yes, there.
I think investor and my interest. So my question is, how do they with climate solution? Yes, like me or maybe any other entrepreneurs, use it. We are investors now. Have a huge interest in climate.
Okay, so I'll give you a generic example of using open
More
network.
in the UK.
Open,
because
yeah,
in India, you have him. So, this is now
we can
for
talk
the...
separately. So, but I think how to solve Delhi problem is over the drink. But I think we could apply the same principles of open network, open transaction network.
Maybe applying it to remember that entrepreneur yesterday that he said, he was doing 50 billion electrification and all that, and he heard about the open networks, and he said, yes, I would work with you.
Yeah.
How would that work? Would solve problems?
So I say again,
in that example,
climate is a very broad area. Energy, circular economy, recycle, reuse kind of arguments. I think some of you are doing that effort. So I think you have to ask these questions when it comes to, it's a large coordination problem. Think of that way. To bring efficiency into cycle and bring viability into transactions, coordination problem has to be solved. And open transaction network brings a very powerful way to digitally coordinate and digitally trust. That's a very broad answer. I'm not sure you get it. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about some other time. But if you can solve trust and coordination problem at scale, very high chance.
I'm piggybacking on her question to something specific. So in your panel yesterday, when this entrepreneur said, we can possibly work together, how would you envision that collaboration working? He was
like climate related.
Yeah, it was climate related. He was
the laser guy.
The entrepreneur that was the reason why you cannot put the grid is because planning permission takes so long. So normally what they were doing now is they're using robots. Yeah. They're using robots to excavate, sort of.
So he was an entrepreneur who is building laser-based, plasma-based mechanism to blast through. And so, okay, he was there, great innovation. But the question he was asking is that now, today, when they create a large contract, one, their technology has to be available, discoverable, and applicable. Otherwise, they have to go sell one at a time. So as an entrepreneur, they are interested in making their available and service, what's called a boring service, boring of the drill service, available as a service that they can contract and buy and sell. Now, you can do very small ones for cables to 15-meter ones for transport. Now, second possibility is that he's also talking about, subsequently he was saying, not on the panel, off the panel he was saying, the output that I produce is actually junk when I bore. But someone else needs that thing. Now, today what do? I bilaterally contract somebody to take my waste. In one sense, what I consider waste, but there's somebody else considered a potential resource to do. And bilaterally get a transport company to actually transport that waste to the counterparty. Imagine an open network where I can actually, somebody can discover, I'm generating this. Somebody nearby say, I actually need a ton of that. And somebody who's going an empty truck that is going through could offer logistics service to say, anyway, I'm going through, I can actually carry. Discoverability of opportunity is dramatically increased when you create a coordination platform like network. So many possibilities, including recycle.
So that's all that circularity, right?
Yeah, circularity.
Yeah.
Very key for that. Yeah.
We have a very wide network, Nagahat and Union. So we have that network. We have that
In India, of
Yes,
course.
in
Yeah.
India.
Yeah.
That network, we have that intervention. So why we cannot use that knowledge and make what green points for good behavior, for environmental friendly behavior.
We should do. Yeah, let's do it.
Who are nursed for
We have an effort right now with actually Stanford on this
We can talk that
separately.
Yeah. A question there? Yes.
But I don't know whether what works. You guys are good at it. Academics are good at it to figure what does societal change behavior means.
Yeah,
Actually, we can't go on.
let's not
Yeah,
get,
let's not get in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
we have school children who are teenagers and we have partnered with 2,000 students and 2,000 schools all over India. So I think
Very nice.
Yeah, so
Yeah. Very good.
Very good. We should.
Yes.
Climate change is about scaling up solutions. It's about putting the right solutions in the right places. And I guess if your open network is very provider driven, how are you trusting that those providers are getting solutions in the right places rather than just the places that are making them a lot of money? And what's the
Very good.
planning strategy, alongside this?
So this is similar to asking the question. Oh, first of all, we are not making sure anything. So we have to ask this question as a layer above, saying, we are selling wrong products, maybe unhealthy products for something else. So we can ask the same question. Why are they selling all these products? Maybe we should have a rule, a policy to not disallow, allow. These conversations are very local. Second question we have to ask is, what is right? How do you know what's right? Which is also an evolving question. Because unless you try, you don't know what's right. Unless you try at scale, you don't know what's right. Because it might work really well for a community. When you start scaling, you realize, like social media. Did we know 10 years ago the negative parts of social media? We could have guessed it, but we really didn't know. Now we are tackling with some of those issues. But I think so what is an evolving question asking is by ability to society, for society, social actors, policymakers, everybody to apply that act by observing what's going on. Open networks allow observability of those systems and to constantly tweak the right way. What is right? Who knows what's right, wrong? Which is what we do as humans.
And
anyway.
Pramod, it's also true, as you mentioned, that one of the key things, and this is an area that we're particularly keen to develop, is that it should bring collaboration and discovery. So where we said Belém, the people in Belém, it happened to be obviously people that are interested in creating these decentralized networks for inclusion, for education, for training. And so, the people, and yesterday we were in a climate impact retreat because, that's the people that, we want particularly, you cannot determine, because this is a technology, how it's going to be used, but by targeting sort of areas, we come here to talk about that title, not something else. But, I think, it's a use case that you need. And then once the use case, but what the tool itself does is coordination and discovery. So, the like-minded people here with like-minded people in Belém and like people in Bangalore can really do better things together and find maybe what's right. Absolutely. In a Hayekian kind of world of discovery. The more information, the less friction in finding that information, the better. And that's, I was in the Mont Pelerin Society, which is the Hayekian economics in Delhi. And then, I was presenting that some of these, way of doing markets reduces transactions and it therefore makes them more inclusive. Everyone can participate. And that's also the rationale again, so for ONDC, right?
So there's two examples that are actually playing out on the open transaction network, which is somewhat interesting. One is artisans in India, very local artisans, had very, very tough time being discovered. And so obviously intermediaries make all the margins and artisans still get to keep very little. The open network suddenly gave these artisans a direct to consumer, D to C. Otherwise, only big platforms can do. How do you even get to 500 million customer? Today, network is bringing 500 million customers onto the network. So suddenly your artisan, now whether you should buy them, friendly, environmental friendly, recycled products, should you do that? Some of these school children experiments, educating them to say, maybe you should, even if it's slightly costlier, maybe that's the right thing to do. But now you can start seeing them. The number of transactions on this kind of products is increasing. You can start asking those questions. How do we educate people to buy more sustainable products than cheaper products? Things like that at least can be answered on top of that.
And you are very excited about tourism that just
Tourism
launched as well.
huge.
Right? So,
That's another area that we are working on, because again, it's all underperforming systems today, whether artisans, tourism. In green, we are seeing where the charging point today, charging stations in Bangalore, electric charging station, give you two options. A slightly cheaper, currently cheaper, fossil fuel source, or 1 rupee extra, but green source. Now, should you buy? Very high chance Indians would say, I want cheaper. Okay, for now, it's okay. But maybe we can start having that conversation with people to say, even if it's 1 rupee extra, ideally you should be really getting green source and not fossil source. But these choices can be now brought into the open network. Then you fine tune the behavior. Try to fine tune the behavior.
we have a question there.
Artificial intelligence. So nowadays, not only do people have access to simply use the computer, but they have the artificial intelligence to find their ideas. And we can see that lots of platforms are using the AI to boost their power.
Yeah.
Technology can transform the future of the digital system that we are using.
Okay.
That's a great question. No, that I'm influencing the juries here for the best book.
Oh, they're
prize.
the juries. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they are the juries,
Oh,
and
you are
they are locating the books. But that's because we forgot of the power of mixing AI with backend. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very obvious. Again, AI will bring both good and bad out very, very fast, and very chance that bad ones will come out first anyway. But we can clearly see the value of productivity increase, creativity possibility, democratizing tools for many people who are creating product catalogs, brochures, and today these tools are not existing. Beautiful brochures can be produced using AI by a one-room homestay and actually put it up on Expedia or whatever tool. You're democratizing the capability. You're democratizing capability through tool. We are very, very excited about it because productivity increase, capability increase, democratizing that is very powerful. And we are also bringing efficiency. AI will go dramatic efficiency in insurance processing. India is huge, very low on insurance penetration. One of the reasons is that insurance claims process is excruciatingly painful for most Indians. And so we are completely creating a new digital claims infrastructure that is going to process much faster, cheaper, so that you can actually do same day. You can get confirmation and so on, so that people want to buy insurance, prefer to choose that. So you can bring efficiency into the system. So in many places, AI can be no use, including fraud detection, other things we are actually starting to use. How would it impact on transaction network? We have very, very specific efforts of agentic layers that we are building on top of the transaction network to create human-computer interaction like voice. Today, in DC, we can actually do a voice-based search using Indic language that I'm looking for. If I have to type, by the way, Indians are one of the largest WhatsApp users, but the least typing users in the world. Indians forward messages, forward images, bring down WhatsApp every morning, and because we just forward random shit. And then everything is audio. Your driver would record and say, sir, I'm not coming, in their local language, or I'm late. They can't type. Typing is very unnatural for most people. Voice is very natural for people. How do you deal with voice-based searches, voice-based discovery? I'm looking for something. So we are layering AI capabilities on top of human interaction capabilities, on top of the backend network, whereas backend network create structural contracts. The layer above creates much more fluid human experiences. So very powerful notions that we can play out. We are already playing out few of them. We'd love to see more. All right.
Question?
Last one.
Last one.
Insurance thing. They're making the
Provider dominance, yeah.
purchase in this. Are very targeted females.
Yeah.
This is diversity of customer base, given that patients literacy. Females, but they quite significantly. So
What is AI? So it stems from a very personal experience because I have to meet my mother every time she pays for her milk bill, how to use UPI to pay it on a digital. So this gender difference of using this
is being more modified.
And hold that answer because I'm going to cheat a little bit, and because Nikki has helped me with the Center of Science and Policy. She has fellows from government that work, in Cambridge, and she helps me to to bring lots of people to our meetings, to open networks and all that. And so I want her to give a chance to win the book. So please, just just your impression from the from the discussions. Yeah. Yeah.
Gender, we think we have so many questions on ethics, but just listening from the point of view that we bring civil servants to bring them to this kind of to learn about the technology. So I'm just gathering about the possible applications.
Wow, amazing.
So that, but we started already thinking about applications in energy, in UK, in health.
Or finding a parking lot.
Yes, and I think the parking lot is so that counts as a question.
That's
okay,
fantastic.
yeah.
So maybe I'll give you a quick one.
Yeah.
I think two parts of the answer. One, if there's one thing that's 15 years surprised us is Indians' ability to absorb tech. Continue to surprise us. It's amazing at the speed which people are absorbing it because it unlocks value for them. They know. There's no way anybody could have said, you shall use UPI. There is screw it, I'm not going to use it. 500 million people use. In 6 years, it went from 50 million people doing digital payments in 2016 to 500 million people doing it. That means it's really benefiting people who want to use it. But the second part of the gender question is that the gap continued to remain in terms of smartphone ownership, so on. But what the absolute recent study shows that 3 gaps have been completely closed. Bank account access, identity access, bank account access, and internet access. Completely closed. That's amazing to see, but so much more stuff to do. The gap is wide in our.
And just to make it about India, because it's not like PIX, which is in Brazil. So this payment system has even have faster penetration.
Larger.
And
80%.
So
India is only 50.
So it works. Markets that concept has been demonstrated in another continent and also at deep scale.
And I'll just close it with saying that why open network, peculiarly, and a good ending there, is absolutely to increase diversity to not decrease diversity. It's actually a very interesting play. When you create an open playground, you have 1,000 flowers blooming. Which one works? Who knows? If they unlock value, they'll survive. They don't, it's useless, people just reject it. But the ability to bring 1,000 flowers, 1,000 innovation allows the diversity to be dealt with.
More markets. And,
More markets, more innovation,
markets
more ideas at a much lower cost. So hopefully we'll navigate this better. Thank you so much.
The beginning.
Yeah, this is always the beginning.
Much more to come.
Much more to come here.
Thanks.
Thank you so
I have
much.
a small gift, but I've realized I've left it in my office.
You get.
We'll go to the office.
no,
We're going
it's
to
fine.
the office. No.
Huge thanks to both of
Thank
you
you so
for,
much
for
for having
this. We look forward to actually thinking about ways we can collaborate.
Collaborate, absolutely, yeah.
And I'm sure there are a lot of people here who want to chat with you after. So I think we close it to an end.
Yeah.
And just to say thank you.
Thank you so
very
much. Thank you. Thank you.
Which is in the books?
So the gender question.
Ah.
Nice to ask him, go the last. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, okay, thank you.
To Ronita.